you ever felt like you're taking all the action in your business, but absolutely nothing is moving the needle? You feel completely and utterly stuck wherever you are. Maybe you've been stuck there for a while as well. Let's say you've been making 5K months and you've been taking all the action in the world that you've seen on social media. You've attended all the masterclasses, you've learned from all the gurus, but none of those actions are working for you. You can't get past that 5K cap to get to that 10K. Or likewise, if you're at 10K, you can't get to the 20K. You've been trying so hard. You've been just chucking things at the wall to see if they stick, and nothing is moving the needle. Well, you might be surprised to hear that probably you haven't got a problem with the actions that you're taking. It's actually you that's holding yourself back. And let me explain. Our subconscious rules the show when it comes to running a business and getting us to the next level of growth. When we are running a business and we have certain beliefs about ourselves, those beliefs, subconscious or conscious, can hold us back from achieving the things that we want to achieve. So let's just say you are that 5K per month business owner. You've been making that consistently for a period of time, but then you're stuck. You've been trying and trying and trying to get to 7 or 10K every single month, but that gap just never closes. Because you've been taking all of the action, there's probably not a problem with your strategy. There probably is a belief that you have subconsciously holding you back from being able to achieve that growth. And that might look like, I'm not worthy of the 10K months. I don't have the capacity to hold the 10K months. Whatever that subconscious belief is, it is probably ruling the show. And this is the part of entrepreneurship that not enough people talk about. We talk about taking actions, we talk about driving the growth, but we don't talk about the other side, which is us, our internal monologue that is driving our success, the actions that we take, the things that hold us back, and also how it impacts our nervous system and our capacity to hold the things that we actually want. Now, I'm talking all about this business strategy, mindset work, subconscious work, and nervous system management today in the Remote CEO Life podcast with my guest, Jess Pinili, who is a business strategist and subconscious mentor and the founder of the Woman Mastery HQ, which is a membership for all things business, mindset, subconscious work. Now, in my own personal business, over the past few years, I have definitely needed to unblock so many limiting beliefs that were holding me back in elevating to the next level of business, that next evolution that I knew that I wanted, that I knew that I was capable of, but my subconscious programming was not letting me achieve. So I've had to do a lot of subconscious reprogramming and a lot of nervous system management to allow myself to have the capacity to hold all of the things that I wanted, to hold all of the goals, to hold the 10K months, to hold the 20K months, to be able to receive those with ease and in flow. Your subconscious is in control of that. And like I say, not enough people are talking about this. So in today's episode, we are going to be talking about this in a lot of detail, actually. And this is exactly what Jessica does now, as she's on a mission to help ambitious women not only build a profitable, sustainable business, but show up as who they truly are, even when the money and visibility start rolling in, because it's all well and good getting to one level of your goals, but then what happens when you want to reach the next one? You're going to find yourself capped and having to go through that process again. So today we're talking about how to balance deep business strategy with subconscious rewiring so you can build a business that sells and a self that can hold those results without burning out. This episode is all about aligning your identity and your business together, and why mindset is often the missing piece behind growth, and how you can create a life and a business that thrives through all of your seasons in business. Now, if you know anything about what I do with my freedom model method, this is very similar approach to how I operate in my business, by helping people find a business model that works with the lifestyle they want to live, and working through any of the mindset blocks that might hold them back from actually taking action to that. So today you're going to hear it from both myself and Jess, exactly what we both did to overcome some of those subconscious blocks, and also how you can also overcome those subconscious blocks that might be holding you back. So you stop taking the action, start focusing on the nervous system, start focusing on your subconscious beliefs, and you're going to start seeing that momentum come back in. So if you're ready to create more momentum in your business, make sure you're listening to this episode. So tell us a little bit more about you. Tell us who you are, your background, and what led you to start in your business strategy and subconscious work.
So for all of the listeners, I'm called Jess Pinili, and I'm a business strategist and a mindset coach. And I've been in business now 6.5 years, coming quickly up to 7 years. Prior to this, I was working in the fitness industry. And prior to that, I actually completed uni with 2 degrees. I have a business degree and a arts degree in writing, majored in writing. But when I finished that, I was in this in-between of, okay, I've spent all this time doing these degrees of things that I thought was the right thing and that I should be doing with life, the very 9 to 5 mentality. And I realized that if I went down that path, I was going to be very unhappy. And kind of towards the end of my degrees, I fell in love with the gym. I fell in love with fitness. I fell in love with wellness and all of those things. And I decided to, in my last year of uni, also do my certs in fitness. So it was kind of a tandem study. And I fell into the fitness industry, which I'm so happy I made that decision instead of just sticking with, okay, well, done my degrees, I need to just do it, or, it's the wrong thing. And I spent years in the fitness industry. I was a group fitness instructor, then a solo PT, and then I was managing gyms. At this point, I was in Perth. And towards probably the last 1 to 2 years of managing gyms, I realized that I could feel inside myself that I wanted to do so much more. And the conversations I was having with my private clients on the side were always around the personal development things that I was doing, whether it was journaling, manifestation, habits, anything and everything. And it would be the session, and then I would speak to all of the clients in the gym, and it just really lit me up. And I always thought about, what would it be like to actually have my own thing, whatever this thing is that I'm trying to conceptualize in my head, but also have the freedom to travel anywhere and to work in my pajamas. Those were like the 2 main things for me. And everyone speaks about wanting freedom or wanting to travel everywhere, but I love traveling. I love seeing the world, and it was a high value for me. But I guess there was the intersection of a career and life in Perth that looked great on paper. There was nothing particularly wrong with it. And the intersection of me feeling like I was missing out. And it was very confusing. And I know that so many people probably deal with this. And so I had to make a decision, and took me better part of those 2 years when I was feeling this. But that decision led to me quitting my job with only $700 in my savings because I was terrible with money, moved to Bali, and I started my business from there. And that was 2019. And that was a time where what we do wasn't really a thing. And I had started a podcast the year prior because I just wanted to share what I was learning and all of the things that I was doing. And I remember going to Bali just with this fear of, this could really fail. And the worst case scenario is I'm going to have to move back to Perth, probably move back in with my dad until I get another job, and then go find an apartment for myself. Or I can put all my time and effort and energy into building something that, again, I, even at that point, couldn't really conceptualize. I just know that I wanted to work online. I know that I wanted to work on my own terms, to be able to travel freely, even though in 2019 that was still far off. And the $700 in my savings, I remember the first month in my villa was a payment of $680, which is crazy to think now in this economy. And it was in Canggu, and I knew that I had to pay that, and I had to make what I was doing work. And so I put time and effort and energy into building out my first program that was kind of a hybrid of the mindset stuff, but also the fitness stuff, because that's what I knew at that point in time. And I started to build from there. And I was in Bali probably a year and a half-ish until COVID. I had to move back home to Perth. And that's when I had to figure out the next layer. Now, fast forward to nearly 7 years, have coached, I say over 400 clients, but I think it's getting close to 500 now, and really have found my edge in online business. I've really understood what I value, what's sustainable for me, when I need to exert discipline and focus, and when it is okay to rest and to be in a season where you're integrating everything. And it's been such a learning experience, but in the best way possible.
I love that you said that, like, for you, like how to run it for you and what works with like your rhythm, because I think that there's so many people that don't run their business for them, they run it for the money. Whereas actually, like, which is a massive part of it, I understand that. But it also has to work for you. It has to work for the lifestyle that you live. It has to work with your natural ebbs and flows of, as a woman, your cycle, your lifestyle, the things that you're working around. So I love that you've thrown that in there at the end there around like making it work for you, because it is a learning curve. It is a lesson. And you've gone probably through so many different iterations of that business in the past 6, 7 years that it has just been a lesson, learn,
Mm.
implement, it's like a constant cycle. And I think one of the things that someone can really take from your story there is the lesson of being able to just go for it when you have $700 in your bank account, because I'm sure associated with that was a lot of fear around having only a small amount of money and then investing that into your villa and then having to figure it out from there. Talk me through a little bit about that, because I know that money is a big block for many people when they start a business. It's constantly like, actually had a DM. I've got a call with someone today that said the reason that she hasn't started is because she's scared to invest money, and she still has a job. She probably still has some backup savings. But I think when we get that, we have this like scarcity around money. There's never going to be enough for the time to start. So talk to me a little bit about that moment in time. What was your feelings? How did you work through them?
It's so interesting because over the years I've had this conversation, and I think as I evolve as a business owner, as a woman myself, my answer changes and shifts slightly with how I see it. And I think number one, isolating, if you have a job and you want to build something, a business, a product, and you have that, I guess, safety net of a job or savings, I definitely, where my values stand right now is go for it. Use that. Utilize building alongside your job and being able to have that safety net, because there's something from creating from a place of overflow and abundance. But on the other side to that, I think that it takes a huge amount of guts and courage to take a leap when you are essentially, like I was, building from scarcity, and there was a huge part that was scared of failing. And that's why I think it's always important to understand the benefits and drawbacks and neutralize what you were doing, because I was able to understand, for me, the worst case scenario was it does fail. I have no money. I have to go back home, and what, I'm in the same spot that I was before I left. But I think if you're listening to this and you're like, okay, yep, kind of easier said than done, especially in this economy, because I've heard it many, many times. I think it comes down to, are you truly inspired by what you want to create? Do you have this deep desire and drive to build what you want to? I think it's all well and good to have a perception of online business that you're going to post a few pieces of content and you're going to be a millionaire living on the beach. That's kind of like the image that is sold to us. And we need to understand that if you build from that place of number one, I need, or this should work because I've seen it, and you're not really connected to it, it doesn't really inspire you. It will probably always feel like a failing cycle. But I feel that I look at my life at that period, especially in that 2 years, like I mentioned, everything on paper, my life was fine. There was nothing dramatic. There was nothing that was perceived as negative. But for me, I just knew that I had to do something different with my life. I knew that I kept repeating cycles, attracting the same types of relationships, both romantic and platonic. I knew that I was choosing the same patterns of thoughts every single day. Yet the other side to me, the bigger side, was like, you are meant for so much more. You could create more from your life. And I think that if you truly, and that's an intuitive thing, and it comes with self trust. But I think if you don't have that deep desire to go off and create something that you're truly connected to, and like you mentioned, Sophie, there's been many reiterations of my business, of versions of me. But if you were just going off for the money, you're going off because you think it's this elusive ticket to freedom, it's probably always going to feel like you are in scarcity. I truly believe that I was my driver was, number one, I know this is for me. Number two, I want to do this because the thought, and it's almost the getting into an understanding, okay, if I don't put everything I have, and I spent hours in cafes working in Bali, hours and hours and hours, it was finding this balance. But I think that you really have to practice a discipline when you first start a business, regardless of whether you have a job or you're doing it with savings, but you have to find that connection. And I think that because I started with that connection piece, every day that was a hard day, or every day that I was selling my first program and there was nothing. And, beyond that, I had been building my personal brand in the fitness industry as well. So essentially, I wasn't starting from, I guess, zero when it came to posting on social media. But I think in that I was so connected and driven by what I wanted to create and the vision that I had long term in my life. Whereas, and even going back to what you said about getting driven by money and it can't be the number one goal, is it a realistic thing to look at in our reality? Yes, of course. But a few years ago, I started to get driven by that, and I started to get sucked in by a lot what was happening in the coaching industry, and this perception of you need to make X amount, or this is what you should be doing or else you're failing. And let me tell you, I was making a lot of money and I was miserable. And I remember just sitting down after a long period. I'm like, this, number one, it's not sustainable what I'm doing. Number two, I am falling out of love with something that I was so in love with and I'd created. And it wasn't it wasn't a feeling of, okay, I don't want to be a business owner or do this anymore. It was, something is off, and it's really off. And I realized in this moment it was the exact same feeling that I had back when I was in Perth. And I was like, something is off right now. And I think, again, and goosebumps speaking about this, I think listening to your intuition and allowing that to drive. And I always say to all of my clients, my members in my membership, business is hard. Building a business is hard. It's not easy. No matter what level you are at, I reflect on this personally, but also working with women who are at all different stages. There are new levels and new devils. And I think it's about asking yourself, am I willing to go through those levels? Am I willing to pivot when I need to? Am I willing to make decisions really fast? And that's what I had to do.
Yeah, you used a really key word there in everything that you were talking about, which was balance. And I think all of it is around like everything's centered around balance. Like you mentioned right at the beginning of what you're talking about, the you could go and start a business from without your 9 to 5 with like a little bit of savings, but you're operating from a place of scarcity. You could also go and start your business alongside your 9 to 5, so you've got that security and you're building from a place of feeling more comfortable, feeling more secure, feeling more abundant. It's just finding a balance between all of the moving parts, because not one truth is right or better than the other. And it's interesting you mentioned around you earning all the money, you having all the success of the things that tick all the boxes in the coaching industry. I've spoken to so many coaches that have had the same level of success and said exactly the same thing. And it's not necessarily that they're unhappy with what they're doing, it's that something is off. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like they're connected to themselves, to the things that they want to be delivering. I see it as like a whole collective shift in that people just want to be more real. Like, I think we're so tired of seeing all of this like success on paper, or like this hustle culture mindset. People just want to live. They just want to like do the things, and for it to allow them to live a nice life. And I think going back to what you're saying around like connecting to yourself and like understanding exactly like who you are, that's the key to unlocking that, and then finding a balance between that and then obviously taking the action. It's like it's not one or the other, it's both in conjunction. They work to actually give you the things that you want to do. So how do you at the moment then, given all the changes that you've had, and you were in that place of you had the success but you weren't happy, how do you now operate in your business, in your day-to-day life, to make sure that you're continuously connected to who you are, but then you're still making those like measured decisions to find the balance between the two?
This year was a big pivotal moment in my business because I think I took all the learnings from the past 6 years and it was kind of like a restart of what I wanted to bring in. And I launched my membership this year, and that had been something, honestly, I really had the concept for it back in 2015, way beyond my business. But again, I didn't really know what to conceptualize. And I think that I had been waiting for perceived perfect moment in my business to create what I wanted to do. But I also wanted to be able to build my craft, build my expertise. And so this year for me, I really worked on taking everything I've learned personally and professionally over the past 6 years. What can I do so I am building a business and life that go together? And I don't believe that life needs to come first and business, or business first and life second. I've always believed this, that you should be able to build something, whatever that is, alongside your life and live that. And I wanted to implement this even more so this year, but have it as something that is just by nature. And so a big thing is, number one, understanding my seasons of the month. And something I teach my members is I operate by 3 different seasons: sprint season, bloom season, integration season, and being able to split every single one of my months into different ones. There's no right or wrong. You can have 2 sprints back to back or 2 integrations back to back. But I think looking at all my time over the past years is the moment that I start to feel disconnected, the moment that I start to feel that, okay, my life is taking over, maybe I can't put time in my business, can't in quotation marks, or vice versa, it's because, and what I've noticed with women I work with, we aren't working towards and in the seasons that we need to, and we're not taking time of integration. We're not taking time for bloom, which is creativity and flow, and sprint, which is the whole mentality of structure and systems. And I think that has helped so much to know that on the other side of a, let's say you have a sprint month, you know there's an integration where you live by everything. The second thing that has really helped me this year is getting rid of everything in my business that was making money, but I no longer felt connected to. And when I, at the height of 2 years, 2-ish and a bit years ago, my signature group coaching program at the time, that was my biggest revenue that was coming in from it. I loved it, and then I didn't. And I felt resentful. And it wasn't the things that I was teaching I didn't like or I didn't believe in. It was, I know I'm meant for something. And then there was other aspects of my private coaching. And so basically burning that to the ground and taking a big leap of faith of putting my time and energy into what I really envision this business to be, which is my membership. And I think what business owners forget, or, and this can apply to women in 9 to 5 careers, but sometimes you do have to take 10 steps back to slingshot all the way forward. And it's really scary because you don't know the result. You don't understand what's going to be on the other side. And I think being able to follow what you really want to do, even if it doesn't make sense. Because if you look at that logically, why does it make sense for me to burn everything that's bringing in my revenue, comfortable revenue that I can live my life, pay my bills, go traveling with my partner, to start something that I don't even know if it's going to be successful? And I don't even know if people are going to want. I don't even know if I can sustain that. And you don't know. And I think I really this year focused on, not just professionally, but in my personal life, what are the things that I truly want to give my time and energy to? What are the things that I really want to give all of me to? And be able to do that at all different degrees. And I think that's important. I think business owners specifically, what I've noticed, lead too much in things always need to make sense. I think you need to make decisions fast. I think that you need to pivot, as I mentioned, but I think that sometimes in business, if not 95% of the time, it is trial and error. But are you learning really quickly from that? And I always say, I have failed so many more times in business than I've ever succeeded. And that's not a bad thing, but it's gotten me to the successes that compound and that create the life and the business that I want to. And so I always say, like, fail fast, fail so fast. And you don't know until you try something. And I think having those two things, really connecting to something, living by my seasons and being honest about that, but also being able to have spaciousness outside of business and not just friends or a partner, but things that you can do, truly do for yourself that aren't, okay, let me just sit on the couch on my laptop and think of content ideas, or let me just edit this while the TV's on. And like, what are the things you do for yourself, the small things? Where do you take time away? And it's so obvious. But honestly, for myself, the past few years, I haven't really prioritized that. Like, I have always gone to the gym regularly. I've always seen my friends, so it's not that, but I think really be in the moment and not, okay, I can't read for an hour because something's going to mess up in my business or I'm going to miss something. I was never that present. It was always switched on. My brain was always wired to do, 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 do. And that's how you become resentful. So I think for me, finding those pockets of moments where I allow myself just to surrender. And like you mentioned, I love that you mentioned this, also listening and educating myself on my menstrual cycle and, flowing with that and the energy of that. So that's definitely been huge.
I really resonate. I've done a very similar process this year. I also my whole business was built on a different niche. I started in 2020 in the e-commerce space, and I was consulting and coaching in the e-commerce world. And that was great. It made me money. It worked. It was reliable. I was getting clients because my whole career background was working for some very high profile businesses in the e-commerce and retail world. So people trusted me in that space, and I knew I was really good at it. And similarly to what you said about just maybe September last year, I just had this feeling. I was like, this isn't it. This isn't what I'm meant to be doing anymore. Like, this doesn't resonate with me anymore. It's not working for me. Not necessarily that it's not making me money. I don't mean that goal isn't working, but like for me, this isn't working. So I also burnt everything to the ground and rebuilt and had to trust a process, and still feel like I'm kind of in that process of trust of like, okay, I'm starting to see results from the things that I'm building, but it's not where I want it to be yet. So I'm having to stay in trust to know that I'm moving in the right direction. And when you're rebuilding something, obviously, then you're not starting from scratch because you've had all of these lessons, you've got all of this experience. But at the same time, there's a lot of different, like I've built, and then I've been like, actually, no, let's change that. And then do it like this and change it again and pivot whilst I go, because I am just learning as I build something. But I loved what you said, that you had this idea for this membership way before you even started your business, because what I have personally found for myself, and to be true for clients as well, is that the first idea that they had is usually the one they circle back to. And this is the same thing for me. Like, when I first started my business, the way I wanted to run it was online courses. But back then, obviously, I didn't have an audience to market these online courses to. So I started just naturally falling into one-on-ones. Then I got sucked in by the whole group thing and doing all of the other things that everybody else tells you to do online. And I got sucked into that, and I followed somebody else's model, if you like. And I didn't enjoy it. That's not how I wanted to operate. So I also have been very mindful of this rebuild of like, am I building this because this is something that I want to do? Or am I building this because this is what I've heard is working for somebody else? And I just have to keep coming back to that and have to rebuild it for myself, and also surrender when I've had a very stressful few months with some family emergency stuff happening. So I've just had to surrender. I'm like, I can't be in hustle mode right now. I can't be like build mode. Yes, I would like to be, but this isn't realistic. So I'm just having to surrender and rest. There's seasons for everything, whether you work on a monthly cycle, yearly cycle, whatever your season looks like. There is a season for every single piece of it. And you also mentioned a really key part, which is integration, which is, I think, a bit that quite a lot of people miss. They can analyze the business, they take the action, but they're not actually integrating all of the things that they've actually learned, and then they'll often float back to an old version of themselves or old version of their business that wasn't necessarily working for them. So I really resonate with that journey you've been on. I've been on a very similar path this year myself. And I assume now you're coming off the back of it, you've launched the membership. And I know that you combine business strategy and subconscious work, which is something that I have personally done quite a lot of. So I understand what that looks like. But talk me through like some of the practices that you've got in the membership that combines those two elements together.
One of my biggest things when I started my business was learning and understanding what women really need. And I didn't start as a business coach. And I moved from confidence slash mindset coach and mindset coach for a long time, building my own business. And then I started to pick up one on one clients who were either wanting to pivot from corporate, begin a business, or who were in business and they wanted the mindset aspect. And then it started to turn into mindset and business conversations. And so I started to develop that craft. And what I realized is you need both the strategy and the subconscious to work together in everything that you do. And I think that when we look at our human experience and being able to make things happen, we need the structure, we need the systems, we need to be able to understand how something's set out. And specifically with business, yes, we need to follow what we want to create and what we want to do. There are essentially no rules. And I think you probably resonate with this too, Sophie. Sometimes we can fall in the online space like, oh, well, I must be doing that, or that's the only right thing when it comes to strategy. The good thing about being a business owner is you get to make the rules. But on top of that, when it comes to strategy, there are things that proven over time, sales psychology, buyer psychology, the way that you need to sell to an audience, those are years and years and years and years and years old, and they're just proven. And so we need those aspects. Then on top of that, it's all well and good to have a great plan. It's all well and good to be able to build out a landing page or a group coaching program or to host Zoom calls. It's also really good to be able to analyze and understand your profit and loss. But if you can't back yourself up, if you don't trust yourself, if you keep avoiding executing for your next level, if you keep avoiding what's actually driving your decisions and behaviors, very unconscious, then you were going to be missing out on a big, big part. And I've had business owners come to me who are capped at huge months, 50, 100K, 150K for years. And to someone listening and maybe starting out, you're like, oh, that's so much a month. Like that's incredible. But when you've been capped to that for a long time, you know your potential and you keep trying everything and implementing the strategy and doing all of the perceived right things. We need to look at the bigger picture. And this can apply whether you make $5 million a year or you're making right now $5,000 a year. It doesn't matter. It's all the same. But it's about understanding that your caps, the way you make decisions, your behaviors are all linked into that subconscious. And the way that I teach it when it comes to implementing with the strategy is subconscious identity, which I break down in two layers. So layer one is your belief systems, what you believe to be true about yourself, the world, money, relationships, everything. And then on the other side of that is your nervous system's capacity. So it's not necessarily how calm you can be in business or how peaceful you can be, but it's about your tolerance for change. That's what capacity is. And a lot of business owners want the big things, want to create this and that. They want that amount of money or they want that freedom. Do you have the capacity, number one, to bring that in, to hold that, to sustain that? And number two, do you actually at your core believe that? Do you believe that you are worthy of that? Do you believe that you are able to create that and do that? Do you believe that even though you want, let's say, $1 million a year, do you believe that money can serve you? Or do you still have the belief that it's a bad thing or hard to come by, for example? And so building the membership, I really wanted to create it's a very high touch membership, but create a hub for business owners, brand founders, for women in corporate who are pivoting to get the best of both worlds and to be able to learn how to use that in intersection. And what I've noticed with all the members in the membership so far is there's always this ebb and flow. There will be just like seasons. There are periods where it's very strategic focus. We need to set up the systems and the structure. We need to understand your messaging, your visibility strategy, your sales ecosystem. And then there is going to be moments where, all right, we've set that up. We've been analyzing it. What's the bottleneck here? Well, it's not all these things that we can easily tick off when it comes to systems and strategy. So let's look on the other side. Okay, what's actually driving your behaviors, or how are you responding when it comes to sales conversations or posting content? And I'm so proud of what I've created because not only do I practice what I preach, I think that's very important. Not only have I been able to work with hundreds of women in this methodology, but to now bring it together in a hub and to share that and to know that it's not just about let's build the biggest business with the most money. It's about, can I sustain this? Can I create a life that complements this? Can I manage that next level when I get to that next edge? Am I able to fully immerse myself and grant myself grace when things aren't going well, but truly get curious? I think also on that, subconscious work is about the curiosity, about learning and not shaming yourself or being or judging yourself for thinking. And if you're listening, thinking, well, I've had this fear of judgment or this fear of failure for, the past 2 years, and no matter how hard I work, that's fine. Get curious about why you have that. Get curious about why you respond the way you do. And, there is for our fears, there is always a payoff to why we hold on to a fear and we react. And I think sometimes that can hurt someone's ego to hear that of, well, and I use money because it's the easier example. Well, I have this business. Of course I want the $1 million. There's no payoff for me only making 100,000 this year. Well, there always is. Your subconscious, it's wired for efficiency, right? And so it finds the most efficient thing. And I'll share the example that I like to share that kind of emulates all of this when it comes to payoffs and the benefit of holding on to a fear. If you had someone who smokes and their goal was to stop smoking and they've tried everything, the nicotine patches, gum, whatever it is, they've tried everything. They've read all the books, they've listened to the podcast, and they keep going back to that. If you really dive in deep into the desire that you want, so the desire that this smoker wants to stop smoking because they want to work on their health, maybe attract a partner, whatever their value is. But yet they can't seem every single day to smoke. And by the time it's done, they're in a spiral of judgment and they're shaming themselves. Now, if you start to analyze, and I want everyone to do this for their life and look at and isolate that, what happens in the lead up to this person smoking? And so, just for this example, let's say this person always seems to smoke when they are with their friends because that's what everyone else is doing. The cigarettes are on the table, so I'm just going to have one. So then we dive deeper. Most people stop there and go, well, yeah, because it's hard, or, I'm just there with my friends. If you look into that deeper, for this example, it's about, well, that person, the payoff is they actually feel connected to the people that accept them for who they are. And so if they're so used to that and they truly value, in this instance, the connection and their friends and the acceptance of their peers, well, that's a way bigger payoff than, oh, if I quit smoking, I'm going to get healthy at the gym, because right now you haven't weighed that up to be a bigger value for you. And so, of course, this smoker is going to keep choosing that because internally, whether they consciously know it or not, they are getting the connection, the acceptance, and that's what they are wired for at that point in time. And so I share that example because I think it's important to know that everything we perceive as a negative pattern or unhealthy, or why can't I stop doing this? Or why can't I stop, doom scrolling or procrastinating or ruining every man or woman that I date? Look at the payoff. What is the benefit to you staying the same? And there's always a benefit. And it doesn't mean those benefits need to be bad, but it does mean that you value that thing more so. And this even links to how we started our conversation. For me, I was repeating the same cycles for 2 years until I made the switch and realized I valued taking a risk and doing something with my life differently versus staying in Perth, working the same job, familiar job, getting an income, living in this apartment in the city, being around my friends and repeating the same cycles. I valued that. That was a bigger payoff for me than, oh, maybe I should start something of my own. But then I got to the point and it was no longer a top value for me. I valued my trajectory of my life. I valued being able to have something of my own. I valued being able to make my own decisions, to make my own money on my own terms. And of course, I valued, well, if I wanted to travel all the time, how can I make that work without asking for annual leave? So I think, I mean, I went on a bit of a rant there, but I think, when we look at both the strategy and the subconscious and kind of how I put that together in my membership and all my private clients, it's important to know you can have the perfect plan, Notion board, Google document. But I promise you, if you feel that you have been doing everything you possibly can, you're ticking the boxes when it comes to building and scaling a business, and you feel that your money isn't where you want it to be, or your results aren't showing how you thought they would because of your effort, I guarantee it's something hidden unconsciously that it's unconscious. So you probably don't even know that you're playing into it.
Fully agree. Everything you said, fully agree. Have experienced it myself, can confirm everything you're saying is
Mm.
correct. And yeah, like you can be taking all the action in the world, but yet you can still be stuck. And that is all through unconscious, subconscious conditioning, beliefs, past trauma or things holding you back, or nervous system regulation. For me this year, like I think the past few years, things that have held me back have all been subconscious pieces, but I've been doing subconscious work now for the past nearly 5 years. So I feel like I've unblocked a lot, but obviously every single time you elevate to another level, there's more things to
Yep,
unblock.
new level, new devil,
I
always.
love
But I
that.
think that's
Yeah.
important to bring up because I think that sometimes I say this in my clients when they want to get to a certain level and then they think they're going to be all good. And it's not that. But I also think going back to the curiosity, it's so beautiful to be able to unravel different parts of you. Are those parts sometimes really hard to confront and really difficult to hold with and feel somatically and understand what's actually happening in your brain? Yeah, they are. But I think with every layer that comes up, try to, as much as you can, enjoy the process in the sense of, wow, another layer to me. Another understanding. I mean, I think, this is more of my like personal ethos, but why wouldn't you in this lifetime want to fully understand who you are and what you do? And there are painful things that we all go through. And, I know that you mentioned you had a big personal year and, there's things in the past few years that I'm like, life is lifing and this is crazy, but they make you you. And even if they make you into someone that you don't like, you don't love, you don't respect, that's okay. There's a starting point. Understand yourself. And I think that bit of a polarizing view, but I think that people who don't want to understand their full true self, it's insane. Why wouldn't you want to?
Definitely. It's super, super important. And the more you understand yourself, the more action you can take to get things to where you want them to be. And you also mentioned about the nervous system. For me, like my biggest holdback this year has been my nervous system because I've done all
Mm.
of this subconscious reprogramming work. I've unblocked most of the things that are going to let me get to that next level, but my nervous system was completely a mess. So I've had to really allow myself to just rest and take a step back and surrender to the fact that I have to be calm for me to be able to hold all of the things that I want to call in for the next year, 2 years, 3 years. That's going to require a lot of space. That is going to require me to have capacity to be able to receive those things. And I didn't. I didn't have that capacity. I've more so than taking action, obviously, again, balance, had to take some action, but more so than the subconscious work this year for me, it's been about how do I balance this nervous system of mine so that I am able to receive and hold all of the things that I am calling in for myself in my business, in my life. Because right now I wouldn't be able to. Now, not right now, like now I think I'm at a place where I'm kind of coming off the back end of a really dysregulated period and I am feeling a lot more calm. I'm feeling a lot more, I've got more capacity to receive and give also. But you can only show up in your business to the capacity that you've got available for yourself, right? And you can only give to others the capacity that you've got. So it's really important, I think, that piece, again, finding that balance between the subconscious, the nervous system, and all the action taken as well. But it's so important to combine the three things. Without one doesn't necessarily move you forward without the other. So it's like a whole little triangle effect that you have to kind of pivot between each part to keep propelling you forward. And something you said about the 50K a month, 100K a month business owners feeling like they've got that cap on them. I think for so many people, obviously financial freedom and location freedom, lifestyle freedom is obviously the goal, but then you hit those ceilings and you can't get past it. What's the biggest subconscious block that you see people struggling with at that level?
Definitely not being able to sustain it or the responsibility that comes with it. And there are obviously other fears and limitations that come up, but without a doubt, I would say from 50K plus, what I see majority of the time, I'm going to say 95% is I don't know if I can sustain this, maintain it. I don't know. This is going to be too much responsibility. And so when you internalize that, you will keep capping yourself in all the small things. Maybe you were showing up in your content in a certain way, and now you started showing up in a different way. Sabotage. Maybe you were selling every single day, and now you are only selling every other day. These things make a difference, just for two random examples there. But these things make a difference. And I think when you understand that, it's looking at, what do I think I can't sustain? What do I think is a responsibility? And I go through this process of being able to neutralize what comes up, the benefits and drawbacks to that. I think it's important not to live in one polar opposite and oscillate between all your emotions, because that's how you become an unbalanced human being. I think when you can, and it can be uncomfortable. And with my clients sitting on calls or the membership calls and asking them, well, what actually comes up when it comes to sustainability or responsibility? And sometimes it can take a hot minute for it to come out because our ego doesn't want to go deeper. But once it starts unraveling, you understand, oh, yeah, it's not the responsibility of the money. It's that I feel that I'm going to have to pay for all my parents' bills. Or it's not that I don't think I'll be able to sustain it. It's I think I won't be able to go to my dancing classes on a Monday anymore. And it can be as big or small. And so I think that this comes out at all levels, but definitely 50K plus, I see that a lot. And fully, just like I did when I moved, I did the worst case scenario. When I got really, really honest, what's the worst case scenario? I move country and I fail. I make no money. I make no friends. Like nothing works. And for me at that point in time was having to go back to Perth, probably my dad having to buy a flight home for me to Perth, move back in with my dad because I no longer was at my rental, my apartment, and find a job again in the fitness industry. Now, when I look at it and have neutralized that, that's not like some people can look at it and go, well, it's not that bad. Yeah, it's not. But for me at that point in time, that was because I didn't want to live that life. It wasn't even failure. It's just, I didn't want to be there. But I think that if you take the time at any level you're at, 50K, 500K, 5K, $500, whatever that next level you're working towards with money, with any type of success really or result, ask yourself, what do I think is going to be the worst case scenario, and sit with that, envision that. Because using the universal law of polarity, everything has a 50-50 chance, everything, no matter what. I do this work a lot too on the subconscious side with my private clients specifically of anything that you are experiencing in life, with your relationships, there's a 50-50 chance you and your partner can break up. 50-50 chance your partner can cheat on you or you can cheat on your partner. People will say, well, no, of course I would never do that. I would never cheat. Yeah, because you morally, and you don't morally want to do that and you value not that. But realistically, universally, that can happen. And that's the same thing with businesses. Business owners are too afraid to look at what could happen beyond success. And I think that is probably another key thing that I would add to this year, probably year and a half for me, is looking at things beyond the success and the dopamine of, oh my God, this could happen, or I could go here, I could create that. That's great. But beyond that, what if it doesn't work? Okay, well, this is what would happen. And I had this conversation out loud to my partner. I get him to be a mirror for me. And I said, okay, worst case scenario, I burn everything to the ground and I start my membership and I don't make a single sale in a year. What's that worst case scenario? And we talked through that. And it was painful. It was hard. I was shrinking and contracting in my nervous system because I didn't want to think about that. I didn't want to internalize that and think this could be a possibility. But now on the other side of that, it's like that helped me be able to see, well, I understand all sides of the coin now, and I can only build from there. So I think it's really important to be able to do that, and really important to be able to do that at every level, and not think once I hit $1 million, I'm going to be okay. Or once I get this amount of followers, and I've heard this before, once I hit this amount of followers, all my stress with content creation will go away. No, probably not. There will be new layers of stress, new ways of creating. Money comes with different stresses. Money creates opportunities, which creates freedom. But it also comes more responsibility. So for you, and if someone's listening and they think, yeah, that scares me, the more responsibility with more money, what is the responsibility you're perceiving right now? Is it facts? Like, going with the last example, do you actually have to pay your parents' bills now that you make a certain amount? Or have you just conjured up that story in your head? Do you actually have to pay for lunch every time you go out with your friends and they'll expect you? Or is that a story? And so I think it's so key to look at that. And this comes into, with the capacity work, being able to understand, well, what's a story and what's something that's proven for fact.
Absolutely. I can't resonate with anything you said more. Like I've personally gone through this exact process. I also look at worst case scenario all the time, and I'm like, okay, this one. I think once you face the worst case scenario and you look at it in the eye, and you can look at like different worst case scenarios that would be the best option for you, it eliminates a lot of fear out of it as well. And that's obviously sometimes what is going to hold you back. So it's really important to look at it from like all sides of the coin, to use that as fuel as well for your fire. So I really, really relate to everything you've said, and really appreciate you sharing all of your wisdom on that today. Just one last question before we kind of wrap
Of
up. I'd love to
course.
know what freedom looks like for, or means to, all of my guests. So tell me, what does freedom mean for you?
Freedom to me is being able to wake up with spaciousness and choose what's in my calendar. And that can sound like a very stock standard superficial answer, but I think I've really embodied that over the past year of I can, for lack of a better word, manipulate my own time, my own calendar. I can make choices according to me. And I have the ability to smash out a million appointments a week, or I have the ability to go, you know what, this is when I have my period or my luteal phase, and I'm not doing anything but my admin work on the couch. Or on the other side, being able to book a trip or do something whenever. Only a couple of weeks ago, I went to Sydney from Brisbane for a day and a half, and it was booked 3 days prior, a quick trip with a friend for an event. Being able to do that, that's freedom to me. Being able to go, not only the financial freedom of being able to that in that sense, but knowing I get to make that choice. And I think because I spent so long when it's specifically with my gym management job, having to be dictated when I can take leave, when I can be sick, all of that, that was something that really I was like, this does not sit right with my soul. And, if I look at it even a bigger overview and straight to the soul, I think freedom is the small things, being able to wake up and have coffee with my partner and go for a walk before we both start work. It's being able to say to a friend, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. Can we do a afternoon coffee Wednesday? I finish all my calls then. Or it's being able to wake up on a Thursday and go, no calls, no appointments. You know what? I'm not going to do work this morning. I'm going to do whatever I want, gym, sleep in, read for 5 hours, and then I will get to business. And that creates a lot of spaciousness in how you feel. But even as an extension of what you said, Sophie, I think it's also priming your belief system to believe you can do that and you're worthy of that at every level, but your capacity to do that. And I mean, you asked me this 3 years ago, it would have been like, oh my God, no, like I'd rather just get stuck into work, get that done. There's shit to do. Versus now I'm like, no, it's not an emergency. I can actually just lay in bed for 3 hours and read, finish this book that I've wanted to, and then I can get to that. And There's something that is so rewarding in the small moments. And I think a lot of business owners learn it the hard way. I definitely did, because you think, oh, money, and I can just go on whatever flight and do this. Yeah, that's great. And I'm so fortunate that I've created that with my partner. But I look at the mornings I can wake up and just have a slow morning. And I love that.
I love that for you as well. That is so nice. That's exactly what I would determine freedom to be as well. Having the choice, having the capacity to do all of those amazing things every day for yourself. So
Mm,
congratulations that you've been able to find that for yourself.
thank
And
you.
I love that you're now helping other people, how about women do that for themselves as well. So tell us a little bit about your membership, how people can connect with you and get into that.
The best place to connect with me is over on my DMs at Jess Pinili. Send me a message, send me a VM. I'm a yapper, as you can tell, so I'll always VM back. My membership is Woman Mastery HQ membership, and it's on my Instagram. It's everywhere. You can join at any time. There's no open close card at any time. And that's really a space, as I explained, that bridges the intersection of the strategy, the subconscious. It's very high touch. I believe, and I think I've learned the hard way with my own investment. I don't like cookie cutter. I don't like being in a call where you feel like nothing's going to get answered or there's a million people. I don't like being parts of community that aren't community vibe. And so I've taken all the things that I've learned from past investments, from my own past group coachings, private, and I've combined it into one. And honestly, it's such a magical place to be. And I'm so happy that I launched it and I can support women. And I also have a podcast, the Jessica Pinili podcast, that you can get on every single streaming platform.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that today. It was so nice to hear your story and everything that you have worked towards and been able to achieve for yourself. So, congratulations on all of that. And thank you for inspiring us to go and start the business, even if we only have $700 in our bank account. Such an amazing story. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Remote CEO Life podcast. And thanks so much for Jess for joining me to talk all things business and subconscious reprogramming. For me, this has been a hot topic for my past 4 to 5 years. I've done so much subconscious work and it has really helped me be able to live in my most truest, authentic self and show up in my business in the most truest, authentic way. Without that work, I don't think I would have had any of the successes I've had in my business because really, like I said at the beginning, your subconscious is ruling the show. And if your subconscious keeps ruling the show, it's going to constantly challenge you to achieve more and constantly challenge you to overcome the blocks that you've had that are blocking you from achieving more. So it is really important work. I love what Jess is doing with her membership. And if you too want to build a business that works for your life and is in true alignment with who you are, you can check out my free masterclass. It's called Find Your Freedom Business Model. And it's going to teach you exactly how to build a business that leans into your skills, into your passions, into the life that you want to live, and you build it based on that. So I'm going to pop the link in the show notes for you to check that out. And in the meantime, I will see you next time in the next episode of the Remote CEO Life podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you loved this episode, and I will chat to you very soon.